The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, the U.S. debt limit deal is approaching a vote after passing a key test in the House Rules Committee on Tuesday. However, President Biden's 30% tax proposal on electricity used by crypto miners is not currently in the 99-page text posted on the House Committee's website. Joining us now to discuss is Congressman Warren Davidson. Welcome, Congressman.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning to you as well. So let's get right into it. In a recent tweet, you stated that the tax proposals would be dropped for miners. Do you think that they're coming back when the budget's negotiated?
Well, look, Democrats love to tax things. That's kind of part of their identity. And generally, Republicans oppose taxing things. That's part of our identity. They wanted to put a bunch of taxes in this debt limit bill. Republicans opposed that, and that was one of the concessions we got from the Biden administration. That they hadn't passed, that frankly they don't have a way to pass the Senate or the House. So in a sense, it was a bit of a formality to include it, but we did get it removed, and Biden administration actually wanted it. So it was something that we count as a win.
Were you surprised to get this concession?
I mean, not really, because like I said, it's clear that Democrats want to put a lot of taxes out there. It's not clear that they could even pass the Senate, given the 60-vote rule in the Senate, and it's certain that it's not going to pass the Republican-controlled House right now. Nevertheless, it's important for people in the space to pay attention to these policy signals, and you'll see, hopefully, Democrats don't unite behind the idea of a digital asset, the DAME tax. So the idea of taxing mining is kind of crazy, and yet you have states and even political jurisdictions that are outright banning certain activities. And, some people say, well, we don't really need proof of work. We can mandate that everyone go to proof of stake or some other protocol. That's a big limitation on freedom and frankly compromises security. So I think the last thing is you should never fall for the bait that an attack on proof of work isn't an attack on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is inherently proof of work.
Another big talking point for the crypto community has been around this wash sale loophole. Do you think that the White House was serious about wanting the wash sale loophole closed?
Yeah, I think they're serious about that. And, frankly, wash trades are one of the concerns that haven't been adequately addressed to be able to get a Bitcoin ETF, for example. The idea of having some sort of market structure that would be able to identify things that are not permitted in securities trades, for example. And so things that are challenging in all commodities, though, frankly, to track. And so when something's traded as a commodity, it does become harder to detect some of those things. Nevertheless, we do have market manipulation tools in place. I think the regulatory framework is working to keep up with what's possible in the digital asset space. So I think whether it's with law or regulation, FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and others will continue to look at this.
I'd love to hear your opinion on the state of regulation in the U.S. right now, since you brought it up. Do you think it's heading in a good direction?
Yeah, I'm the vice chairman of the Digital Assets Subcommittee, part of Financial Services. We're doing a joint bill with the House Ag Committee. We hope that it stays bipartisan. Inherently, if you look at the space, the market participants, a lot of them would see themselves left of center politically, and they're super excited about the space. In Congress, however, Elizabeth Warren, Gary Gensler, and others that are high-ranking people in the Democrat administration or high-ranking Democrats in the Senate have kind of created a little bit of a war on the digital asset space. So hopefully the rest of the party breaks ranks and stays on board with the opportunities and possibilities. This really shouldn't be a partisan issue.
That's a good point. It shouldn't be a partisan issue, but it seems like it's increasingly becoming a partisan issue. I guess the real question is before the presidential election, what kind of crypto regulation actually has any realistic chance of passing? Because for a while, it looked like some sort of stablecoin regulations were going to go through. There are a bunch of bills out there. But now it really seems like everything is completely stalled. Before the election, could something pass, and what would it be?
Well, we're hoping the stablecoin bill passes. It should pass out of the House Financial Services Committee and head to the floor of the House this summer. We're working on a market structure bill. We should have text on both here in the next couple weeks. Coming up in June, we have hearings in the Digital Assets Committee, and I think we'll have a markup at least on the stablecoin bill in June, maybe even the market structure bill. So I'm excited about that. I hope that there's a path for Senator Sherrod Brown and the Senate Banking Committee to take them up. And, frankly, it's been over 2,000 days since they passed anything out of that committee on any subject. So the Senate Banking Committee hasn't been incredibly productive on anything. This would be a great opportunity to break that trend.
Sorry, can you clarify which stablecoin bill you're talking about and just what the main provisions are? Because there's quite a few sort of floating around or being talked about.
Well, the Democrats had a text in September that when Maxine Waters was chair, Democrats had control of the House in the fall, and they wanted to move a bill. Then FTX blew up, and they were scared to touch anything related to the space. It kind of killed all the momentum. Republicans haven't stopped working on that bill. We had our own input and revisions to it, and so we've continued to move forward. And unfortunately, a lot of the leadership in the Democratic Party has kind of backed away from any support for anything in the space. And nevertheless, lots of other Democrats are supportive of the space. We think we can make the stablecoin bill bipartisan. It will be the bill, it should be public soon, and it will be the bill featured in hearings coming up in the next week or two.
So just quickly, I just want to turn to central bank digital currencies for a moment. I believe we've talked about this with you before on the show, but it seems like that issue is really heating up. We actually have several bans proposed, including by Governor DeSantis in Florida. Why is this issue heating up so much now? Just because it's been talked about for a while. Some would say that there's no indication that the Fed is really serious about initiating a CBDC. They've indicated otherwise. But why is there suddenly so much heat around this idea of a digital dollar?
Well, the Fed says that, but Fed now goes live here this summer, and a lot of people see that as the architecture that would need to be in place to facilitate a central bank digital currency. And the Biden administration also has resisted, saying that the Fed lacks the legal authority to do this of their own accord. Of course, they don't. Congress would actually have to authorize that. But people that want central bank digital currencies, which include some people on the Fed and certainly some people in the Biden administration, certainly a lot of people that look at China and all but say, gosh, we really envy the power the Chinese Communist Party has. Maxine Waters had a hearing on having a central bank digital currency and followed that up with a hearing on nationalizing credit scores, just like the Chinese Communist Party. So I think this is Orwellian, and I think, look, the best thing to do is to prevent it right now. We should be speaking with a unified voice. We do have bipartisan legislation that would make clear that the administration has no authority to implement a central bank digital currency without law, nor does the Fed. A lot of times the Fed says we're independent and separate, but if you look at your money, it's all signed by the Secretary of the Treasury, and that's all authorized by Congress. Article 1 of the Constitution gives that power to Congress, and we certainly aren't going to cede it.
Yeah, that's just to be clear, I'm pretty sure that FedNow and a digital dollar are two very separate topics.
They are separate, but a lot of people have conflated them and say that it creates an architecture. It does create a central database, and it does create a payment system that would allow 24/7 banking, but with the current system. I think the other thing is, for the average citizen, people that watch this show are educated and informed. They understand the space. But if you look at, most of the districts in the country, there are people that really look at no distinction between Bitcoin and a central bank digital currency. Both are digital forms of money in their eyes, and one leads to the other. But they're 180 degrees apart. One is permissionless peer-to-peer transactions. The other is completely controlled by the state. One separates money from the state. The other is complete state control over the money system. So I hope that we can keep sound money and something that creates the idea of a stable store of value, an efficient means of exchange, and it can become the record of account. We don't have sound money in our current financial system, and we're dealing with big consequences of it. I think a lot of people don't see how it grows the wealth gap, how it fuels inflation, and we're seeing the evidence of that. I'm just not sure we're getting enough informed citizens to understand the connection between what we've done to the supply of money with the U.S. dollar and globally, because other countries, other economic systems like the Eurozone have done the same things that the United States has done, and some of them even, faster. So that's why we're seeing the same kind of phenomenon around the world.
We started the segment off talking about crypto mining. How important do you think crypto mining is going to be in the discourse around the upcoming election?
Well, I think it's important to focus on it. I'm glad some of the candidates in the presidential election are talking about it. And frankly, I was kind of surprised and excited to see Robert F. Kennedy talking about it. So hopefully it stays bipartisan that way. The Biden administration isn't great on this, but hopefully with an educated leadership team, we can make it so that it's embraced. And it is. I think the other thing is people often look at some of the things in this space as just another product, and the reality is it's a completely different computing architecture, and it is more secure. And the hard thing is people have a hard time understanding how to adapt their current systems to be compatible with this whole different architecture. And if we can do that, I really think we're going to have a more resilient, not just financial system, not just economy, but even cybersecurity can be made better if we apply the principles that we've learned from this. I'm really excited about zero knowledge proofs, for example, but a lot of people are scared to death that makes things too private, and they think it really makes things secret. It's not the same. Privacy and secrecy aren't the same thing.
Okay, the debt ceiling vote is on the tip of everyone's tongues. Are you able to tell us how you're going to be voting?
I'll vote for it. I'm not voting for it because it's a great bill. If I were writing a white paper at a think tank, I certainly wouldn't land on this solution. But it is the most conservative spending bill that will become law, we presume, since I've been here. We voted on much more conservative spending bills. They just haven't become law. This actually has a path to become law, and that'll tell you how bad things are. It's an ugly cap. It raises the debt limit by a lot, but that's because the financial condition of our country is very ugly. I hope that it sets up the conditions to really do something in appropriations, and that's where the fight on spending needs to take place.
Congressman, so one of the big trends we've seen recently is obviously the SEC has been cracking down on crypto. It also seems, and you would know better than me, that a lot of people in Congress have just kind of soured on crypto after FTX. And as a result, we're hearing a lot of talk about crypto companies leaving the United States. And I guess the question for you is sort of in the last minute that we have here, what do you think is the main argument for keeping crypto companies in the United States? Because I think that's part of the problem. I think there's a lot of people who are like, who cares if crypto leaves the United States? Like, why does that matter? And how would you sort of persuade those people that it does matter and that we want to keep the crypto industry here?
Well, we've set up the protocols and architecture for every major innovation since the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution, automobiles, aviation, aerospace, computing, the internet era. Why would we bail now on fintech? I mean, the reality is we have about 4.5% of the world's population. We have about 25% of the world's GDP. We have over 50% of the world's invested capital in our capital markets. But when you look at crypto, 70 to 90% of the liquidity is offshore. That is not good for our capital formation in the United States. We need the system that we have in our country to provide the things that only our markets can, and we should work to do that with legislation, not just putting pressure on regulators. But one of the regulations that Gary Gensler has highlighted is we need to restructure the SEC. We need to eliminate the chairmanship and create a 3-and-3 parity with the commission so that the commission actually has to be collaborative instead of being driven by an activist.
Congressman, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Congressman Warren Davidson.